welcome back to this channel. Today's a really special video because I really have been wanting to share my testimony with you guys. That being said, I don't know everything. I'm just a child of God who has been changed by God and witnessed His goodness, but I personally cannot say that I know everything. I've never taken a theology class. All I know is what I've learned in church over the years, the research I've done, and what I know from the Bible, and what I know from my own life experience. This is just my story, and I want to share this as a witness to God's work in my life. So if you don't know me super well, you may be thinking, how can you have been changed drastically by this? It just seems like you're so happy and joyful all the time. But I do think things kind of started out that way, but looking back and really reflecting on this in the last couple days, I've really seen how God has weaved so many threads throughout my life. Up until this point, I can really see the transformation that He's brought in my life, which is really, really special. So I wanted to start at the beginning. This kind of takes place in 3 parts. So here's part 1. So growing up, I went to a church that my parents started going to right before they had me, and there was a school attached to my church. It took place in the same building as my church, and it wasn't as small as you would think it is when I say that. Our church was rapidly expanding, as was our city. Everything was kind of growing, and our church and our school kept growing with it. Growing up, my parents served in our kids ministry. They also went to school for acting, just like me, if you follow my channel. So part of what they used their skills for in our church was they put on skits every week for the kids about some sort of virtue or fruit of the Spirit, and they kind of taught them through like a story. So every Saturday I would watch the Saturday service. We would rehearse like from, I don't know, maybe like 10 a.m. all the way till 6, and then we'd have dinner break. Then we'd go to the Saturday night service at 7 p.m. And then the next day, we would drive home, wake up the next day for church, and then we would have 2 services Sunday. If I think about it now, it's probably at least 20 hours a week, and they were also both working full-time jobs, which is kind of insane for something you're doing with no pay. I'm very, very grateful from an early age that I saw a positive representation of how to use your gifts to serve God. I think that's really special, and I'm really glad that my parents were doing that with their time. At the same time, I also saw the inverse of that. I saw that the more our church grew, the more we built a bigger cathedral, and it was like, wow, like our church is really doing great, and we're so on fire for God because we have all this stuff. And that kind of definitely fed into my mindset. Growing up, I had a sense that kind of works equaled faith, which now I know is not the case. But one thing that I remember seeing is once I graduated into like the tween ministry, they had a sign and it said like young adult milestones or something. And it had like christening was number 1, and then it had baptism, and then it had 5th grade camp. And at the time I was in 4th grade, about to go to 5th grade, and I asked my mom, I was like, well, was I christened? And she was like, yeah, and she showed me like the certificate, and I was like, okay, well then I got to get baptized before 5th grade. Before I went to 5th grade, I ended up getting baptized. People probably thought I was the most devout 9-year-old they'd ever seen. I was really just trying to follow what I thought was correct. A lot of people, they might get baptized once for what they feel like was the wrong reasons and then want to get baptized again. For me, I do feel like I had the right idea with my faith. I wanted to grow further into the church. I wanted to grow more towards this thing. So therefore I sought out additional opportunities like being baptized, and through the baptism classes I learned a lot about myself, and I feel like at that point I was consciously taking a grasp on my faith. So personally I wouldn't get baptized again, but that's totally like a thing that people do that's fully acceptable. I just kind of viewed it as like, oh, like if I ace a test in school, I can also ace this church thing. Then when I was about 10 years old, my parents came to me and said, hey, we're actually gonna switch churches. And I was really upset. My parents didn't fully disclose all of the reasons why we left the church until I was older. And even now, I still can't fully understand to the extent that they felt it because I was only 10 years old. Now, as I've explained, obviously I grew up in church, and I know a lot of people who didn't grow up in church have that experience of like, oh, the church looks down on people, church people aren't very nice. And growing up, I never had that experience because I was so intertwined in the church, and so was my family. But one day, since my school was still in the same building as our church, a lot of people who went to my school went to our church and vice versa. And so one time we had like a project showcase, and my mom had come to watch and then pick me up. And as we were leaving, this woman walked past us with her kid, and my mom was like, "Oh, hey, so and so," and the woman just ignored us, kept walking, and my mom repeated and was like, "Hi, so and so," and she like started walking faster to ignore my mom, kind of under her breath but still loudly. My mom was like, "Oh, I guess that's what happens when you leave the church." And this woman next to us, who had also left the church, we found out, was like, "Yeah, the same thing's been happening to me. We left the church about a year ago, and people aren't very accepting of that." So that was kind of the first time I had really seen that church people can be mean, and it opened my eyes to something that I think many people experience when it comes to, quote, religious people. God called us to another church, which we are at still now, and it's a really great place, and so I'm glad all of that led to where we are now. After that, I left my school for sort of obvious reasons since it was connected to the church. So I went into public middle school, which was difficult. I was new, I didn't know anyone there, and went from, being with people who went to the same church, same school all day, all the time, to being with all of these new people who had been in the same public school system together, and I just kind of felt left out. And I made a lot of great friends during middle school, don't get me wrong, love you guys, but it was still really hard to adjust to that at first. I don't know if y'all feel this way, but for me, I just kind of feel like, I don't know, middle school really messes you up, especially as a girl. I feel like it just kind of sucks in a way, but it's something we all have to go through, unfortunately. I just really felt like my confidence plummeted. I also went through the pandemic, my 7th grade and 8th grade year of middle school, so that was exceptionally hard too. To make matters worse for my family, my mom was one of many, many people who was on a ventilator during the COVID pandemic. My mom got sick January of 2021, and she went immediately into ICU, almost immediately on a ventilator, and then spent 5 months in various hospital facilities. And we were told many times as a family that she was not going to make it out. For me, that was a really dark time. I spent either days where I was so numb and exhausted going to school because I'd spent the whole night crying myself to sleep, or I was just walking into school terribly anxious to do all the things that I needed to do, or I just wouldn't go to school at all. It was just a really, really difficult time. I feel like I was very introspective and learning a lot about myself and trying to figure things out, but just really having no guide map of where to go. I learned sort of early at age 13 that life is not fair. Life here on earth is not fair. When I saw my mom come out of the hospital alive, I'm so grateful she lived, but at the same time, I was hearing stories of other people who had family members that had been on ventilators who had passed away. And at the same time, I was also seeing the ripple effects in my extended family of this situation for the next couple of years. Praise the Lord, my mom lived. I am so grateful. I don't mean to sound ungrateful. I am so grateful that she is here alive and well, and I love her so much. I love you, Mom. That is a beautiful part of her testimony, especially, and my own testimony, but I feel like I truly wasn't as connected with God as I am now at that point, and I still hadn't had a true encounter with Christ. After that, I went into high school, and I really felt wounded in my heart. But I still have times now and then where I feel angry or just really upset about what happened. There's a lot of layers to that story and situation, but all of them are for God's glory and for His good, and I know that now deep down. Honestly, this was like the peak of my anxiety probably. I really struggled. Like daily, I feel like every day going to school was like a battle. I just felt so terrified to go to class, to have any social interaction. Everything stressed me out. I was trying my best, but I just felt like I was reaching out and getting nothing. Clearly, I was still getting in my own way because I was living in fear. One day though, I really felt that I had encountered Christ, and that was when I rolled out my yoga mat. I was about to do a workout in my room. I was sitting there on my bed. All of these fears were just kind of circling in my head, and I feel like I heard God in a still small voice, as the Bible says we will hear Him, and I just heard Him say, like, you don't belong to your anxiety, you don't belong to your fear. In fact, your identity is as a child of God. And at that moment, I felt moved to get on my knees, which luckily I just rolled out my yoga mat. So I got on my knees and I started praying and just kept asking more questions and kept digging deeper and saying, "Thank you, God, for reaching out to me and talking to me and showing me that you love me." And that was a moment where I essentially never turned back. Now, by no means did I just immediately become a super Christian from that moment on. I just kept seeking. I kept asking, seeking, knocking. I was watching like sermons every night on YouTube. I would just search up like sermon about question I had, or like verse about question I was unsure of in the Bible. And I would just try to find out. It'd be like, "God, I want to know more about this. I want to understand your heart for this. Like, why is this way? I need to know." And there's still so many questions that I have unanswered, but I feel like ultimately I just have to go back to that curious childlike heart that I had after I had been encountered. The summer after my encounter, my kneeling moment with Christ there, I went to a theater intensive, and one of our teachers, our ballet teacher actually, asked us to get a notebook and to write down plays, shows, things that feel like home, things that feel safe to us. And one show that has kind of lived with me since I was really young was the show Into the Woods. My parents grew up with this show on in the car all the time. I loved it. I would watch the pro shot like multiple times a day. I was so obsessed. If you don't know the show, kind of the crux of the play at the end of the show is this song called "No One Is Alone." And a lot of it is just about like these characters have lost so much, and you see them all come together and realize that they have this found family. And the whole chorus, like final line, is "Someone is on your side, no one is alone." Then the teacher said, "Okay, I want you to write your artist's mission statement." And I said, "Well, I think as an artist, the things I want to put out into the world are things that uplift others and make them feel seen and remind them that they're not alone." So from then on, everything that I've done has been with that intention in mind. I'm even here filming for YouTube and creating these videos in this channel so that I can create a positive, optimistic space for people, especially in a very, very dark world right now. I think the reason I had this video idea in the first place was because since I've started college and as I've become even more secure in my faith, a lot of people have come to me and asked, "How do you balance your religion with your line of work?" Recently, I've been asked some questions on like, well, how do you deal with that? How are you going to deal with that? Ultimately, I still feel the same. Personally, a lot of my decisions are made on whether I feel there is a grace and peace and an open door from God with that opportunity. And I always go back to, is this something that is encouraging and uplifting, or is this something that is not so much that? And that's a big part of my decision. But ultimately, and I think something that if you're a Christian actor, this is something that I would completely recommend, and that's to start at square one and pray about it. Ultimately, the only person who knows the answers is God, so I feel like he's the best person to ask if you have a question about what you should or shouldn't do on stage. Also, I want to say that I am not perfect. There's definitely things I've done in my career as an actor that I'm kind of not proud of, or I'm like, maybe I wouldn't do that now. All I can do is keep moving forward and keep going with these intentions that I have to use my work as a light for Christ. I've seen door after door open because of what I do in acting, and so I really just feel that's where God has given me a gift, and that's where I should continue to keep working at. So that's what I'm gonna do as long as he continues to lead me in that path. I don't have all the answers, but I've always known as much that the most important thing is loving God and loving others. There's so much more I could say on all of these things, but I want to save that for another video, so make sure to subscribe if you want to see more videos like this, and comment any questions you have or anything you want to say. I'm open to hearing your thoughts and definitely ideas for future videos. I really hope that this could be a hopeful message to you and that this could just bring you a little bit of joy right now. Finally, remember that no one is alone and you are loved. Have a great day.